The great hall of the Galactic Council glowed with soft blue light. Hundreds of alien diplomats sat in curved rows that rose high above the central speaking floor. The air smelled like strange flowers and old paper. In this room, the fate of thousands of worlds was decided every day. Daniel Green sat straight in his chair, his face calm even as anger burned inside him. For 6 years, he had served as Earth's main ambassador to the Council. For 6 years, he had watched the other species treat humans like children. Today was no different. The tall, insect-like Veldarian representative clicked his mandibles as he spoke. The human colonies on Proxima B, New Eden, and Liberty must be placed under Council control for at least 20 cycles, the Veldarian said. Their growth is too rapid. Their military presence is concerning. We suggest a quarantine until humans prove they can be trusted. Daniel felt his hands tighten on the simple wooden box in his lap. The box was made from an oak tree that grew outside his childhood home in Virginia. He had carried it to every council meeting for good luck. Around the chamber, other aliens nodded in agreement with the Veldarian. Only a few species looked uncomfortable. The blue-skinned Selma representative, Fosval, shot Daniel a look of genuine concern. The humans have respected all treaties, Fosval said softly, but few paid attention. The council leader, a tall gray alien named Mectoral, raised his 6-fingered hand. We will now vote on the Veldarian proposal to quarantine the 3 human colonies. Daniel took a deep breath. He thought about the 15 billion humans spread across 27 worlds. He thought about how humans had helped the Council solve the fuel crisis last year. He remembered how human doctors had shared cures for 3 major alien diseases. And still, the Council treated Earth like a problem to be fixed. Daniel made his decision. He stood up slowly, catching everyone by surprise. The chamber, usually full of whispers and movement, went completely silent. Ambassador Green, Mectoral asked, confusion in his large eyes. The vote has not finished. Daniel said nothing. He simply placed his papers in his wooden box, closed it with a soft click, and turned away from his seat. Olivia Martinez, his chief assistant, looked up with wide eyes, but something in Daniel's face made her stand too. She gathered her computer tablet and followed him. Commander George Harris, the military officer assigned to the embassy, hesitated only for a moment before rising to join them. Ambassador, you must return to your seat, Mectoral said, his voice growing louder. This behavior is not acceptable during official proceedings. Daniel paused at the giant doors of the chamber. He turned and looked back at the hundreds of alien faces staring at him. For a moment, he considered making a speech, telling them all the things humans had suffered under their unfair rules. Instead, he simply nodded once, turned, and walked out. The human delegation followed him in perfect silence. Their footsteps echoed in the quiet chamber. As the doors closed behind them, chaos erupted. Voices shouted in 50 different languages. Questions flew across the room. What are they doing? Is this some kind of human protest? They cannot just leave. In the hallway, Olivia finally spoke. Sir, what happens now? Daniel kept walking toward their ship. Now we go home. Olivia. All of us. Commander Harris touched the communication device on his wrist. Should I alert the other human embassies? Yes, Daniel said. Tell them it's time. Operation Walking Boots is now active. As they reached the docking bay, Daniel looked out the window at the beautiful Council space station, with its gleaming towers and busy ships coming and going. They think we need them, he said softly. They're about to learn how wrong they are. In the council chamber, Fosval watched the empty human seats with growing fear. Unlike the others arguing around him, he had studied human history. He knew what happened when humans were pushed too far. They didn't shout, he whispered to himself. They didn't threaten. That scared him most of all. Because in his experience, when humans got truly dangerous, they got very, very quiet. News traveled fast across the stars. Within hours, every human embassy in council space knew what Ambassador Green had done. The simple act of walking away had started something that could not be stopped. On the lush green world of Zathoria, Linda Peterson watched her staff pack up the embassy. Through the tall windows, she could see the twin moons rising over the alien city. For 3 years, this place had been her home. Now they had just 6 hours to leave. "Ambassador, the Zathorian Prime Minister is calling again," her secretary said. "That's the 5th time this hour." Linda checked her watch. "Tell him I'm busy. We have our orders." Across the room, junior diplomats sealed documents and wiped computer systems. Security officers removed the Earth flag from its stand. The embassy had never been so busy. Linda's phone beeped with a message from Earth. "All embassies confirm los URE status." She typed back, "Zathoria Embassy, 65% complete. Departure in 6 hours." As she pressed send, she felt a strange mix of sadness and pride. Something big was happening. After years of being treated as second-class members of the galactic community, humans were finally standing up for themselves. On Council Prime, the richest planet in the galaxy, William Foster faced an angry crowd of alien trade ministers. His office was on the top floor of the trade tower, with a view of the endless city below. "What do you mean? All shipments are stopped," the Ardaxian minister demanded. His red face turned almost purple with rage. "You can't do that." William stayed calm. "I'm just following orders. As of 1 hour ago, all human trade with Council worlds has been suspended. But the metallic hydrogen shipments to the central worlds," gasped the minister from Proxus. "Without them, their power grids will fail in days." "That sounds like a council problem," William said. He closed his tablet with a snap, "Not a human one." As the trade ministers shouted over each other, William's assistant slipped him a note. "Human defense fleet is on the move." William allowed himself a small smile. Phase 2 had begun. In deep space, Admiral Susan Clark stood on the bridge of the UES Determination, the largest human warship ever built. Around her, the crew worked quickly, preparing the massive ship for faster-than-light travel. "Admiral, all 17 human warships report ready," her first officer said. "Operation Walking Boots is proceeding on schedule." Susan nodded. "Set course for human space. Tell all ships to ignore Council hails." The communications officer looked up from his station. "Admiral, we're getting calls from 5 different Council species. They're demanding to know what we're doing." "No response," Susan said firmly. "Those days are over." On her display screen, she watched as the other human ships formed up around the Determination. Their engines glowed bright against the darkness of space. "Council Defense Fleet is tracking us," said the sensor officer. 3 patrol ships have changed course to intercept." "Let them come," Susan said. "We're not stopping for anyone." Back in the council chamber, Chancellor Mectoral tried to restore order. The walkout of the human delegation had thrown the meeting into chaos. "This behavior is childish," the Ardaxian representative shouted. "Let them go. We should impose sanctions immediately." Thosval, the Tselner diplomat, stood up. "I suggest caution. The humans would not take such a step without a plan." "What plan?" sneered the Veldarian. "They're just showing their true nature, emotional and unpredictable." At that moment, an aide rushed into the chamber and whispered urgently to Chancellor Mectoral. The tall alien's gray skin seemed to pale even further. "What is it?" asked Thosval, seeing the Chancellor's reaction. Mectoral's voice was quiet but carried across the suddenly silent room. "All human embassies are closing. All human ships are leaving Council space. And," he paused, looking around the chamber, "all human trade has been suspended." A wave of shocked whispers spread through the room. "They can't be serious," the Ardaxian said, but his voice lacked certainty. Thosval watched the empty human chairs. In his many years of diplomacy, He had learned to read the actions of other species. What he saw now worried him deeply. The humans hadn't made threats. They hadn't demanded anything. They had simply decided to leave. And somehow, that was much more frightening than any show of force could ever be. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence from human space. 3 days of growing worry throughout the Council worlds. On the morning of the 4th day, every communication device in the Council chamber lit up at the same time. On each screen appeared the same simple message. The United Earth Alliance formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. All treaties are hereby nullified. That was all. No explanation, no demands. Just 18 words that changed everything. Chancellor Mectoral read the message 3 times before looking up at the stunned faces around him. "They can't do this," the Ardaxian representative whispered. "The treaties. They just did," Fosval said quietly. For a moment, no one spoke. Then slowly, terribly, understanding began to spread through the chamber. "The fuel shipments," said the representative from Proxus. "Humans provide 38% of our metallic hydrogen. Without it." "The food," cried another. "Nearly half our agricultural imports come from human worlds." Mectoral raised his hands for quiet, but the panic was spreading too fast. "What about the Perseus network?" asked Danaid, referring to the ancient transportation system discovered 10 years ago. "Only humans can operate those ships." This caused a new wave of fear to wash over the room. The Perseus network connected the richest trade routes in the galaxy, and due to some quirk of evolution, only humans had the right kind of brainwaves to activate the ancient control systems. Without human pilots, those routes would close. Hundreds of worlds would be cut off from vital supplies. "This is blackmail," shouted the Veldarian. "We cannot allow it." Fosval stood. "This is not blackmail. They have made no demands. This is simply withdrawal." The chamber fell silent again as they considered this. It was true. The humans hadn't asked for anything. They had just left. On Earth, in a secure room beneath the Rocky Mountains, President Frank Moore watched the Council's reaction on a large screen. Beside him stood Daniel Green, the ambassador whose quiet exit had started it all. "They're beginning to understand," Daniel said. Frank nodded. "How long do you think it will take them to realize the full extent of what's happening?" Before Daniel could answer, a woman entered the room. Kelsey Baker was the head of Earth Intelligence, responsible for all human assets across the galaxy. "Phase 3 is complete, Mr. President," she reported. "All human colonies have activated their defense grids. Our people are ready." "And our secret projects?" Frank asked. "Safe and operational," Kelsey confirmed. "The Council has no idea what we've been developing." Daniel looked at the screen, where Council representatives were now shouting at each other. "They still think this is about the quarantine proposal. They don't understand yet." "They will," Frank said firmly. "For 50 years, we've been treated as junior partners. Our colonies restricted. Our military contained. Our voice ignored." He stood straighter. "That ends now." Back in Council space, the first real signs of crisis began to appear. On the mining world of Traxxas, riots broke out when food prices doubled overnight. The Council rushed emergency supplies, but everyone knew they wouldn't last long. In the shipyards of Keldon Prime, work stopped on 15 major vessels when human engineers walked off the job. Without them, the complex engine systems couldn't be completed. And in the Perseus arm, 32 transport ships drifted helplessly when their human pilots received the code to return home. Thousands of passengers from dozens of species were stranded, with no way to operate the ancient control systems. Chancellor Mectoral called an emergency session of the Council's Inner Committee. "We need to understand what's happening," he said to the 12 most powerful representatives. "Is this a negotiation tactic? Are they planning to attack?" Fosval shook his head. "If they wanted to attack, they would have done so already." "Then what do they want?" asked the Ardaxian, fear now clear in his voice. I believe, Thosval said slowly, they want us to realize that we need them far more than they need us. As if to confirm his words, reports came in from the border of human space. Massive energy readings, consistent with large-scale military preparations. Council spy drones captured images of human fleets gathering, defense platforms activating. The humans were fortifying their territory, not to attack, but to make sure no one could force them to return. The Council had finally begun to realize the truth. They had pushed humans too far, and now they were about to learn the cost of that mistake. The Great Council chamber looked different with the human section empty. 5 days had passed since the walkout, and the empty seats seemed to grow larger each day. Chancellor Mectoral called the emergency session to order. His voice echoed in the unusually quiet room. The situation is becoming critical, he announced. 17 worlds now report severe fuel shortages. The Perseus trade routes remain closed. We must act. For once, even the Ardaxians didn't argue. Their proud representative sat silently, his red skin pale with worry. I propose we send High Emissary Lorvan to Earth immediately, Mectoral continued. He is our most skilled diplomat. If anyone can resolve this crisis, it is he. The vote was unanimous. Lorvan, a tall, elegant alien with silver skin and wise eyes, bowed his acceptance. He had negotiated peace during 3 galactic conflicts. Surely he could handle the humans. I will depart at once, he said. With proper respect and a generous offer, I believe the humans will return to the Council. Thosval, the Selnar representative who understood humans better than most, wasn't so sure, but he kept his doubts to himself. 3 days later, Lorvan's diplomatic vessel approached the border of human space. His ship was the finest in the Council fleet, designed to impress and honor those he visited. We're receiving a transmission, his pilot said. A single human ship is approaching. Lorvan straightened his formal robes. Excellent. Prepare the welcome ceremony. But instead of the grand diplomatic reception he expected, a small human corvette appeared on the view screen. It was a military vessel, plain and functional. High Emissary, said the human captain who appeared on the screen. I am Captain Richard Powell of the United Earth Alliance. I've been instructed to meet you here. Lorvan bowed gracefully. Captain Powell, I am honored. When can we proceed to Earth? I carry an important message from the Council. The human's face remained neutral. I'm afraid you won't be going to Earth. Emissary. I've been ordered to deliver this to you instead. A small tube shot across space from the corvette to Lorvan's ship. Inside was a data crystal, the kind used for official communications. What is this? Lorvan asked, confused. Earth's terms, Captain Powell said simply. You have 7 standard days to deliver the Council's response. Good day, Emissary. Before Lorvan could reply, the human ship turned and disappeared into faster-than-light travel. The data crystal projected its message to the stunned Council 12 hours later. The United Earth Alliance will consider returning to the Galactic Council under the following non-negotiable conditions, read the human message. 1. Full voting rights equal to the founding species. Gasps filled the chamber. Only the original 5 species that formed the Council had full voting rights. Everyone else had lesser status. 2. Immediate removal of all restrictions on human expansion and military development. The Ardaxian representative jumped to his feet in protest, but Chancellor Mectoral waved him down. 3. Formal apologies from all species who voted for the containment policies against humanity in the past decade. This caused angry muttering throughout the room. The Council has 7 standard days to accept these terms in full. There will be no negotiation. As the message ended, chaos erupted in the chamber. This is outrageous, shouted the Veldarian. They cannot dictate terms to the Council. Who do they think they are? Cried another. But other voices, quieter ones, began to speak up too. The food shortages on my world have caused 3 deaths already, said the representative from Nyx. We need the human farms. The hospital systems on 5 worlds are failing without human technical support, added another. Behind closed doors, the real arguments began. The Ardaxians and Vulturi, who had pushed hardest against humans, now faced accusations from the world suffering most. Your policies brought us here, the Nixian ambassador shouted at the Ardaxian. You said humans needed to be contained, and now look what's happened. Chancellor Mectoral stared at the economic projections on his screen. Every chart showed disaster if humans remained separated from council space. Worse still, reports came in that smaller council races had begun reaching out to Earth with their own alliance offers. The united front was crumbling. We have 7 days, Mectoral said, his voice heavy with worry. 7 days to decide the future of the council. Thosval looked again at the empty human seats. He alone wasn't surprised by the humans' demands. They never wanted to leave, he said softly to himself. They just wanted to be treated as equals. But he wondered if the council would learn this lesson before it was too late. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, President Frank Moore walked through a secret facility few humans even knew existed. The air was cool and dry, and the walls were lined with the most advanced technology humanity had developed. This was the heart of Protocol Independence, humanity's insurance policy against the council. Status report, Frank said to the team of officers working at their stations. All embedded agents are in position, Mr. President, reported the security chief. They await your command. Frank nodded. For years, humanity had placed loyal agents throughout council space, engineers, doctors, technicians, people in positions to act if needed. Activate Phase 1. Frank ordered. Non-critical systems only. Throughout council space, human agents received their coded orders. Within hours, the effects began. On the council's central communications hub, 3 relay stations mysteriously failed. In the military shipyards of Ardaxia, navigation systems in 6 destroyers suddenly reported errors. On 23 worlds, power grids developed unexplained glitches. Nothing deadly, nothing dangerous, just enough to send a message. Humans were everywhere, and they could do much worse if they wanted to. In her private lab on the outskirts of Seattle, Dr. Heather Johnston made final adjustments to her life's work. The room was filled with glowing screens and humming equipment. On the main display was an image of the ancient Perseus control system, the alien technology that only humans could operate. Or so the council believed. System check complete, announced her AI assistant. All parameters normal. Heather smiled. Begin final test sequence. On the screen, a synthetic pilot, a computer program designed to mimic human brainwaves, activated. The ancient control system responded just as it would to a human operator. Success, Heather said softly. Send word to the president. The synthetic pilots are ready. This was humanity's best-kept secret. For years, the council had believed they held leverage over humans because only human pilots could operate the valuable Perseus network. It was why they had tolerated humans at all. But Dr. Johnston had broken the code. Her synthetic pilots could replace humans on every ship in the network. Humanity no longer needed the council's permission to use the ancient technology, and soon the council would know it. On the colony world of New Terra, Governor Alan Woodrow stood on a viewing platform overlooking the planet's main city. Behind him, his assistant activated a control panel. Defense grid coming online, sir, the assistant reported. Alan watched as hidden panels throughout the city slid open. Advanced weapon systems rose into position. Technology far beyond what the colony had officially registered with the council. The Ardaxians always laughed at our primitive defenses, Alan said. They thought we were decades behind them. That was the point, sir, his assistant replied. They only saw what we wanted them to see. Similar scenes played out on every human world. Defense systems activated, revealing humanity's true military capability for the first time. In orbit, satellites deployed energy shields. Hidden hangars opened to release sleek fighter ships. Sensor arrays extended to their full size, capable of detecting approaching vessels from light years away. For decades, humans had been developing technology in secret, always showing the Council only their older, less advanced systems. The deception had been carefully maintained at every level. Now, as the 7-day deadline approached, humanity revealed its true strength. In the Council chamber, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. "Human colonies are activating advanced defense systems," cried the military liaison. "Their technology, it's far beyond what our records show." Chancellor Mectoral studied the images with growing alarm. "How is this possible? Our intelligence said they were at least 3 generations behind our military technology." Thosval, who had warned them not to underestimate humans, spoke softly. "They wanted us to think that." "The failures in our systems," added another council member. "They must have planted backdoors years ago." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humans hadn't just walked away. They had been preparing for this moment for years. They had embedded themselves in critical council infrastructure, developed technology in secret, and hidden their true capabilities. "We never really knew them at all," Mectoral said, his voice barely a whisper. The question hanging in the air was one no one dared to ask aloud. What else were the humans hiding? Fleet Commander Drax of the Ardaxian Defense Force slammed his fist on the table. His red skin darkened with anger as he faced the Council's military committee. "We cannot allow humans to dictate terms to us," he shouted. "The Council has stood for 10,000 years. We do not bow to the demands of newcomers." Around the table, military leaders from other species looked less certain. Reports of human technological capabilities had shaken their confidence. "What do you propose, Commander?" Chancellor Mectoral asked cautiously. Drax's eyes narrowed. A quick show of force. 3 battle groups positioned at key points along the human border. We don't need to attack. Just show them that their demands will not be tolerated. After hours of debate, the military committee approved the plan. Only Thosval voted against it, but his warnings went unheard. 3 Ardaxian battle groups, 15 heavily armed warships, set course for human space. On the bridge of the Ardaxian flagship Guardian of Order, Fleet Commander Drax watched as they approached the human border. No sign of human defense ships, his sensor officer reported. "The way is clear." Drax smiled. "As I expected, their defenses are concentrated around their major worlds. This border area is practically undefended." "Sir, we're ready to cross into human territory," the navigation officer announced. "Proceed," Drax ordered. "Send the signal to the other battle groups." The massive warship moved forward, crossing the invisible line that marked human space. The other ships followed in tight formation. For 10 seconds, everything seemed normal. Then alarms blared across the bridge. "Energy readings everywhere," the sensor officer shouted. "They're all around us." Space itself seemed to shimmer as thousands of devices appeared, previously invisible to their sensors. Small, spherical objects surrounded the Ardaxian fleet on all sides. "What are they?" Drax demanded. Before anyone could answer, the spheres activated. Waves of quantum energy pulsed from them, washing over the Ardaxian ships. Ship systems screamed in protest as the quantum waves disrupted their functioning. Engines failing, weapons offline. Officers called out from every station. "Impossible," Drax whispered. "Quantum disruptors are theoretical. No one has ever built a working model." But the evidence was all around them. The humans had not only built quantum disruptors, they had deployed them by the thousands along their borders. "All ships, retreat immediately," Drax ordered, his pride forgotten in the face of this unknown technology. The Ardaxian vessels limped away, their systems barely functioning. 2 other battle groups reported similar encounters at different border points. Not a single human ship had appeared, yet the mighty Council fleet had been turned back with ease. In her office on Earth, Ambassador Catherine Wells received the report of the Ardaxian retreat with satisfaction. But her work wasn't done. "Connect me to the public broadcast system," she instructed her aide. Make sure this transmission reaches every council world. Minutes later, her face appeared on screens across council space. Behind her was the Earth flag and the emblem of the United Earth Alliance. Citizens of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice calm but firm. Today, Ardaxian battle groups attempted to enter human space without permission. This act of aggression was repelled without casualties. She paused to let this sink in. More concerning is that these actions were taken while diplomatic negotiations were still ongoing. The screens changed to show internal council communications, the complete record of the military committee's secret meeting, including Chancellor Mektoral's approval of the mission. In the interest of transparency, we are sharing these communications with all council citizens. Throughout council space, people watched in shock as their leaders' secret plans were exposed for all to see. The United Earth Alliance remains open to peaceful resolution, Catherine continued. Our terms have not changed. You have 3 days remaining to respond. The transmission ended, leaving chaos in its wake. In the council chamber, Mektoral faced the anger of representatives who hadn't been informed of the military action. You risked war without consulting the full council, shouted the representative from Nyx. How did they get our private communications? Demanded another. Mektoral had no answers. Every system the council relied on had been compromised. The humans had eyes and ears everywhere. As the chamber descended into arguments, Thosval watched quietly. The humans had not only defeated the military action, but had used it to expose the council's internal divisions. More worrying still, several smaller council races had begun direct talks with Earth. The Great Council chamber was packed to capacity. Every representative from all 217 member species had gathered for this historic vote. The 7-day deadline would expire in just 6 hours. Chancellor Mektoral called for order as the final debate began. We have discussed the human demands for 3 days, he said. Now we must decide. Do we accept their terms, or do we reject them? The Ardaxian representative, still smarting from the border humiliation, rose first. We cannot surrender to these demands. The humans have threatened and manipulated us. Accepting would make us look weak. Several voices shouted agreement, but fewer than before. The representative from Nyx stood next. My world has lost 36 people to food shortages in the past week. The humans didn't create these shortages. Our dependents did. We need them more than they need us. 17 worlds now face critical fuel problems. Added another. Without human metallic hydrogen, those problems will only worsen. For hours, the debate continued, but as reports of suffering throughout council space increased, opposition weakened. Finally, Thosval rose to speak. For 50 years, we have treated humans as lesser members of our community, he said quietly. We restricted their growth, limited their voice, and took their contributions for granted. Now we see the result. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each faction. They did not fire a single shot. They did not make threats. They simply showed us the truth we refused to see, that they are our equals and deserve to be treated as such. When the vote came, it was not even close. By a margin of 189 to 28, the council voted to accept all human demands. Only the Ardaxians, Vulturi, and a few others opposed. 3 days later, a human delegation arrived at Council Station. Led by Prime Minister Andrew Foster, they were met with a formal honor guard, a privilege previously reserved for founding species. In the council chamber, Foster stood at the central podium, the first human ever invited to speak from that position. Thank you for accepting our terms, he began. Today marks a new chapter in the relationship between humanity and the Galactic Council. Foster looked around at the attentive faces of hundreds of alien species. Many of you have wondered why we chose to leave rather than negotiate. The answer is simple. For 50 years, we tried negotiation. We were told to be patient, to wait our turn, to accept our place. He paused. But humans aren't very good at accepting arbitrary limits. It's not in our nature. This brought uncomfortable shifting among some representatives, but others nodded in understanding. We didn't want dominance, Foster continued. We wanted equality. And sometimes, the only way to be seen as an equal is to demonstrate your true strength. Chancellor Mactorrell stepped forward. Prime Minister, on behalf of the Council, I offer our formal apology for the restrictions and unequal treatment imposed on humanity. We recognize the United Earth Alliance as a full and equal member of the galactic community, with all the rights of a founding species. The chamber erupted in applause, some genuine, some merely diplomatic. 1 week later, Ambassador Nicole Harrison took her seat on the newly formed Council Executive Committee. For the first time, humans had a direct voice in the highest level of galactic governance. The human seat suits you, Thosval said as he took his place beside her. Nicole smiled. It's been a long time coming. I'm curious, Thosval said quietly. Would you really have stayed away permanently if we had rejected your terms? Nicole considered the question carefully. We didn't want to leave, but we would have, if necessary. Humans don't accept being treated as second-class citizens. Not anymore. Across the chamber, the council session began. When Nicole spoke, even the Ardaxian representative listened attentively. In the small office where it had all begun, Olivia Martinez, now Earth's full ambassador to the council, sat at the desk once occupied by Daniel Green. She unpacked her things, including a wooden box made from an oak tree that had grown in Virginia. Daniel had given it to her as a parting gift. Inside was a simple note: never let them forget what happens when they push us too far. Olivia placed the box on her desk, smiling at the memory of humanity's quiet exit and the panic that followed. Sometimes, she thought, the most powerful statement is simply walking away and letting others realize how much they need you. The humans had returned, not as junior partners, but as equals. And the galaxy would never be the same.